Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Hosea, or Hosea as we call it, from verse 12. We ended last week at verse 11, and as part of our series 2, we are trying to spend a little bit more time to unpack the Hebrew so that we are able to understand this in a more simpler fashion. Sometimes the English language that is used to translate the Hebrew may trip us or mislead us, or sometimes doesn't resonate with us because we can't actually figure out what it's trying to say. And so our interest in this class is to really open up the Hebrew so that we can actually find a simpler understanding to these verses. In verse 12, and from verse 1 to 11, you have noticed that the problem, the issue that God is charging the sons of Israel are twofold. As you can tell, one is in the area of injustice, that they're not dealing fairly with the people and they are dealing in violence. The second idea that is presented in chapter 4 is very much in the idea of idolatry. I'm just recapping this so that we have a better understanding as we read down this chapter. And idolatry has always been equated to harlotry or prostitution. And so that is the way that the Hebrew is used to express idolatry when the woman goes after other men. And that part is what we have seen in verses 1 to 11. Now, continuing on in verse 12, it says this, my people, and you notice these are the sons of Israel. This is the northern kingdom, Israel. The northern kingdom. Consult their wooden idol, their wand, that diviner's wand, informs them. For a spirit of harlotry has led them astray. They have played the harlot, departing from their God. Now, a little bit of unpacking is necessary. So in verse 12, my people, as in Israel, they consult. The English word consult is that they would ask. They will ask for favor, right? For answers. And here it talks about the wooden idol. The word here is tree. And so the idea here is that in the old days, you get a log, and then you chisel out a face. And thereby that becomes you call it a tree, right? And here it is called a wooden idol. It is a log, right? It is a log, and it is shaped into a face of their idol. The second one is their diviner's wand. Now, the focus here is not the diviner. The idea here is a wand. This word wand is actually a rod or a staff. Basically, a stick, right? A stick. Or you call it a rod. It's wooden. And the whole idea here is they use this for answers. So it says here to inform them. The word inform, it's in the Hebrew, and basically it says, let me just make sure that the idea is correct here. It is to, this is the word here. It is to tell, to make known, cause to make known. Right? I think this would be, manifest is also a good word. And so this is by clear vision. By vision means can be seen. So they use rods to find answers. Now, that's why the translator used the word diviner's rod or wand here. And this is like a divining stick, using it to find answers, right? By visual, right? Make sure that we understand it. And then it says here, the spirit of harlotry. This would be the wind, right? This is the ruach of harlotry. And the word harlotry will really mean idolatry. The wind of idolatry has led them astray. This word here, astray, we have seen it calls them to wander away. Wander away. What do you mean wander away? Well, wander away from God. This word literally means that you're on the path, but you are leaving the path. So the idea here very clearly shows that you are wandering away, slowly but surely, right? Slowly but surely. Our next word is this: they played the harlot. They played the harlot is it is a word that says they became a harlot. What do you mean by became a harlot? Means that they became a woman after another man. That's what played the harlot mean. Now, it could be for money, it could be for provision, it could be for love. The whole idea here is when a woman that is owned by a man goes after another man, and that would be the idea of becoming a harlot, a woman after another man. Now, what we need to pay attention to is this: from their God. Now, this word from their God has an interesting play of words in the Hebrew. The word means from under their God. Okay. Now, what do you mean from under their God? This is the word here. It's an idea that when a man marries a woman, the man is the lord of the woman. That's why the woman calls a man Baal in some cases, the master. The husband, as we have it in the modern day, doesn't quite cut the idea. So the man is to provide and protect the woman in the marriage. When you look at that relationship, you would have the man as the head of the woman. And it is said that the woman is under the authority of the man. That is what it means. The woman is under the authority of their man. Now, when the woman leaves and goes for another man, that is harlotry. She's playing the harlot. And in this case, God is saying, not saying that literally they went and fornicated, but they actually, as a unit of people, Israel, they left the authority of their God, and that would be Jehovah, and they went to be under the authority of another God or another idol. That is what this word from under their God means. So it's not just from, but from under, right? It is very important that we see this. The word play here is to show that harlotry, when a woman goes after another man, is exactly what Israel is doing to go after another God. Now, you must recall in Exodus chapter 20, God clearly says in the 10 Commandments, or called the 10 Statements, You shall not have any other God to my face, that I am a jealous God. Now, all of these words seem to have been forgotten by Israel. That's why in Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, it says, my people are silenced for lack of knowledge. The knowledge is now gone, vanishing. They are discarding it. And so God says, if you forget me, I will forget your children too. Now, Hosea 4:6 is an anchor point to show now in verse 12 onwards what they have been doing. And so God is bringing the case against them. Following on in verse 13, as you can see, they offer sacrifices on the tops of the mountain, burn incense on the hills, under oak, poplar, terebinth, because your shade is pleasant or good. They think the idols are good. Therefore, your daughters play the harlot, your brides commit adultery. Now, this word brides here would be more daughters-in-law, right? Daughters-in-law. Meaning these would be the wives of their sons, right? Wives of sons. These are their daughters. So the women are playing harlot, committing adultery, and this really means that they are intermarrying. Intermarrying. So you have Israel intermarrying with other nations. And not only that, the other nations will bring idols or idolatry through their wives to Israel. And that is a concern here. It is not to say that foreign wives are bad, but it is to point out to Israel that the foreign nations around them are ones who are practicing idolatry. And as a man marries the woman tends to influence the man on the idolatry practices. And thereby, we have read in Hosea chapter 4, verse 7, their children increase, and God says, I will forget them because they too will participate in idolatry. So idolatry became a family thing, a familial thing. One generation to another generation, the moment they stopped being under their God, right here, they have started to be under other gods. Now, verse 14 says this, this would be God, right? I will not punish your daughters when they play the harlot, or your brides when they commit adultery. Remember, this is from verse 13, intermarriage. God is not going to, how should we say, visit them, right? The word punisher is visit by judgment. God is not going to come and judge them. For they themselves go apart with harlots and offer sacrifices with temple prostitutes, so the people without understanding are ruined. So God is saying that they themselves, right? They themselves. Yeah, they themselves go apart. And the word go apart literally talks about separate, right? Separate themselves with harlots. They offer sacrifices with temple prostitutes. These are abominations. to God. And God says they are doing it voluntarily. You can't blame the women. And so the people, Israel, are without understanding and are ruined. Without understanding here means they do not discern. Right? They do not consider God. And because of that, the word here, ruined, right, is an important word. The word ruined here means they cause themselves, they are being, how should we say, being overthrown by the foreign practices, foreign wives, right? Foreign wives. This is just describing what they're doing. Now, more importantly, now comes verse 15, where we see Judah coming into play. It says, through you, Israel, play the harlot. Do not let Judah become guilty. Do not go to Gilgal or to Bet Aven and take the oath as the Lord lives. This is really telling them that right now, playing the harlot, going after other gods. God is faulting Israel. No, this is the north. Then do not let Judah, this is the south. Don't let them become guilty. Don't join, right? Don't join Israel. That's the whole idea. Do not go to Gilgal. Now, Gilgal is how should you say? Gilgal is a place in Israel, in the north, right? Gilgal is a place in the north. And you would see this in Amos. I think you find this in Amos 4:4. And you also see this in Hosea, chapter 9, verse 15. Gilgal is a center of idolatry. So it says, do not go to Beth Aven. This would be Bethel. That too is another place because the golden calf is there, right? Golden cow. And so don't go there and take oath as the Lord lives. What does that mean? This is a formal swear in the name of God. Because the word swear is shavah. And what it does is that you say, as the Lord lives, or as Jehovah lives, that he will become our witness, and whatever we promise to do, we will do. And God is saying, Judah, don't go there, because Gilgal and Bethel is not the place for you to make an oath. Stay in Jerusalem. The next verse is in verse 16. Verse 16 tells us this. It says, since Israel is stubborn. Now, every time you read about Israel, this is the northern kingdom. It is stubborn. What do you mean by stubborn? The word stubborn here means rebellious. Rebellious. Like a rebellious, well, this word here is Haifa. How should we say? Haifa is an English word, The word here is cow. And I would say that this is a baby cow, a small cow, but a rebellious cow. That because these words are the same: stubborn, being rebellious. Now understand this in the way that they feed cows. They feed cows by fattening them. And so they put cows into a stall and they don't go very far. They just stay in the stall and they just keep feeding them and they are fattened, which means that they have more than enough to eat where they are. So God is saying, now God is not going to deal with them this way. God is going to deal with them like a keves. Now, keves is a young male ram, so a male sheep in a pasture field, which means that this is fattened and fed in a stall. This will be fed in open space. You got to find your own food, basically. So God says, since you are stubborn, I'm not going to feed you like a cow. You are like a stubborn cow. So what is going to be a stubborn cow? The stubborn cow will be kicked out and then they will just go and eat on their own. But same with sheep. So God wanted to treat them and feed them like a good cow, but they want to behave like a stubborn, rebellious cow. And so God says, like a male ram, go and find your own food. And that in itself is a more picturesque view or imagery that God is saying, I really don't care. I'm not going to feed you anymore. Ephraim is joined to idols. Let him alone. Remember, Ephraim is Israel. Another name for Israel, the capital of Israel, and this is the northern kingdom. It is joined to idols. What are idols? These idols are what we call images. Remember, when God says, do not make any gods before me, not in any images of forms of birds in the air, animals on the field, and fish in the sea, nor of any persons. Well, that's what images here itself would be, really to an image that grieves God, and that's why it's called an idol here. And so God says, let him alone. Now, this alone is cause to be left alone or abandoned. This is a better word, abandoned, right? And so God says, well, I don't care about them. So you notice whatever we are reading in Hosea chapter 4 resonates with Hosea chapter 1. It's going from Lo Ruchama to Lo Ami, right? Verse 18, their liquor gone, they play the harlot continually, their rulers dearly love shame. Their liquor gone. The liquor here means their wine. This is alcoholic. The liquor is finished. When it says gone, they are, well, it's not gone as in finished drinking. They have been removed. I think it would be a better word. The liquor removed. They play the harlot continually. Now, this word, play the harlot continually, is an emphatic practice of idolatry. They are not doing it on the side, but they're doing it as their main focus. And so the word here, they love to give dishonor. And it says here, they are protector. It says here they're rulers. The ones protecting the people. They actually love dishonor. And the word dishonor, shame, is dishonor. Disgrace. And reproach. The emphasis on rulers is also important in the Hebrew terms, is because God holds the leaders as representative of the people. And so when God punishes the rulers, you would find that God has to punish them as a whole, right? God has to punish them as a whole. Verse 19. The wind wraps them in its wings, and they will be ashamed because of their sacrifices. Understand this, the sacrifices is not to God. Their sacrifices is to idols. Okay, first you have to understand this. The wind wraps them in its wings. The word here, it is actually wrap. But because it says wrap, the whole picture here is the picture of wings, right? The picture of wings. And then you have the picture of wind. And this means that the wind is catching the wing so that the bird can fly. Right? It's that kind of an imagery, which means that this is about sacrifices. And you know, sacrifices is about burning an animal, and then you have the smoke going up and the aroma going up, and they are perpetuating idolatrous sacrifices, and they will be ashamed. The word ashamed here is they will be disappointed, because their sacrifice is to idols who cannot respond. Now let's pause here for today, and we will continue chapter 5 tomorrow. But understand this. God is very particular about Hamas, which is injustice and violence against the people, where the rulers are unjust and the people are not helping those who are weak, the orphans, the widows, the poor. But the second thing that God is ultimately really upset and disappointed and angry with them is idolatry, which is commonly using the word harlotry. So learn by context to see whether how we can understand the word in its context. And generally it gives us the picture of going after other men, which means after other gods. And so God marries Israel and Israel goes after other men, and that's called idolatry, right? Or playing the harlot, so to speak. And God is particularly laying a charge against Israel, and they are doing everything to really upset God. And that's about the northern kingdom called Israel or Ephraim. They have centers of idolatry in Dan, in Bethel, in Gilgal. And all of these are attracting people to these centers, and people are unknowingly and unconsciously leaving the knowledge of Jehovah, God, and the Torah, and starting to do all these funny businesses with idols. And particularly where they are starting to marry women from other nations around them, leading them to continually participate in idolatry. They are now in a vicious cycle that goes on and on for their future generations, unstoppable. That is why God is saying, Lo Ruhama and Lo Ami. Can you imagine God who saved them and redeemed them and took them out of Egypt by his strong and mighty hand, told them that they are his special people, and revealed himself to them at Mount Sinai, gave them the law and told them specifically, do not have any other gods before me. Do not make any images following after the shape of the animals, the birds and the fish and the people. And after a few generations down the road, they are being influenced because their men are influenced by the women they marry. And hence, chapter 4 is the description, my people are silenced for lack of knowledge. The knowledge of God has dwindled, dissipating, going to nothing, and they've got nothing more to say about the Torah. The knowledge of God is disappearing, and as quickly as they are ignoring and forgetting God, God is telling them, I will forget your children too. Lo Ami, chapter 1. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.